Imagine playing a game for the first time and hearing a soundtrack that instantly pulls you into the world. For me, that game was Terraria.
Terraria is an adventure sandbox game. It's the 8th best-selling game in the world, where you can fight bosses, giant worms, big eyes, lunatic cultists. You can be really creative. You can build beautiful structures. You can explore the world. It's also very visually appealing. It's got lots of things happening all the time, but it can also be really calm and really nice.
A world as varied and rich as this needs a soundtrack to match, and luckily, composer Scott Lloyd Shelley delivers, with a beautifully expressive OST that blends orchestral tones with retro synthesizers and heavy percussion. I've always loved the game and its unique sonic landscape, and that was the genesis of the challenge my best friend Noah and I set for ourselves. How do you write music that feels like it belongs in a world as fantastical as Terraria's?
It's got a really unique blend of orchestra and chiptune and like electronic music. It's just got a texture and a sound that you don't hear anywhere else.
Now, understandably, Shelley didn't compose enough music for all 35 bosses, 30 biomes, and 25 odd events, and so many of these share tracks. We saw this as a creative opportunity, and we wanted to fill some of these gaps and give unique music to parts of the game that never had it. Our end goal was to compose 6 unique tracks for the game, and to handle a wide variety of different atmospheres, from high-intensity boss music to chipper upbeat town themes. When considering how to split up the workload, we decided that, since Noah has experience making 8-bit chiptune boss tracks for old Scratch projects, he would handle the boss themes. I have more experience composing ambient, music concrete-esque tracks for past games I developed, so I would handle the event and location-specific tracks. We felt that this provided good depth and variety to both of us and appealed to both of our skill sets. In this case, we have a very special role as a composer. Not only do we have to create unique music, but also match the very distinct style of Shelley's original tracks and ensure that our pieces fit within the world of Terraria and convey some information about the boss or environment it would be in. This meant analysing his soundtrack and researching the techniques, but also composing within some strict parameters. This project is the result of that journey, an attempt to capture what makes Terraria's world so alive through sound. Our first stage was planning, as understanding what made Terraria's music sound the way it does was vital to the process. We learnt a lot from the community. One of the most useful finds was a YouTube channel called Marlilo, a creator who focused entirely on Terraria's style. He shared a spreadsheet called the Terraria Sample Sheet, which listed many of the major instruments and plugins used in the soundtrack. From there, we started identifying specific tools. Terraria's orchestral sounds came from the East-West Symphonic Orchestra Platinum library. We could tell because several tracks in the game used its default presets. We also noticed De Hornet, a well-known subtractive synthesizer, along with Rob Pappin's Blue 2 and Albino 3, which Shelley used for ambient textures, rises, and arpeggiators. During this time, we started formulating a list of conventions of the genre. Structurally, the pieces were split into orchestra, synths, and percussion, and the heavy blending of electronic and orchestral sounds was a key convention of the style. We also found that every song we listened to had a new musical idea develop every 8 to 16 bars, and there was rarely any repetition in the tracks, with most tracks modulating frequently. When analysing the 5 generic boss themes in the game, we found almost all of them had some loud, distinctive sound at the very start. This sound, which we coined a siren, helped alert the player to the boss and set the mood for the fight. Lastly, Shelley's soundtrack is important in telling the story of the game. In part, this is through his extensive use of leitmotif and instrument selection to convey the backstory of certain bosses, enemies, and environments. To extend on Shelley's style, we introduced modern synthesizers. We took great care in choosing synths that gave us new opportunities in composition while still feeling similar to the original 8-bit style of Terraria. Around this time, we also consulted professional video game composer Matt Christensen, who just so happened to be our former music teacher. He spoke to us about compositional techniques and interactive game music, and provided us insight into techniques and best practices when composing for video games.
When we were first analysing it, I noticed straight away how quickly everything changed. It never stood still in one spot for too long. It always was moving to the next idea and then moving to another idea. And it really helps keep the person playing the game really engaged.
To start, we decided to transcribe the town theme from the original Terraria soundtrack to understand how it was structured and to get practice writing with the new instruments. We recreated the track in Logic Pro, and when we were happy with this track, we wanted to use it as a groundwork for our first actual piece. We chose to write a town theme for the Mushroom biome because of its super distinct atmosphere and instrument selection. We took the most important mushroom instruments, primarily Logic's African Kit and De Hornet's preset, Super Hornet. We merged these sounds with the structure of the town theme, creating a hybrid track and mixing the welcoming atmosphere of the town theme with the strange sound of the mushroom biome. That's how the Mushroom Town theme was created, our first step into composing within Terraria sound.
The Mushroom Town theme was the first piece that we looked at, that we composed, and so it was a really good chance to kind of dip our toes in the water and really test out how to use the plugins and how to compose like Scott Lloyd Shelley.
This track blends elements of both themes to create a kind of mashup of the songs. We kept the primary melody from the town theme, but we supplemented it with some distinctive mushroom elements. For example, staying true to the noted conventions, we used this leitmotif from the mushroom theme at bar 13. As well as this leitmotif at bar 8. This helped tie our track back to its roots and blend better when moving from Mushroom Biome to Mushroom Village. Following this first success, we wanted to try composing a piece in a vastly different style, so we chose a boss theme, deciding on the Eye of Cthulhu. As this is the first boss of the game, we felt it deserved a custom track. In the story of Terraria, the Eye is said to have been ripped from the god Cthulhu during a past war. Because of this, we looked to the music of Cthulhu, also known as the Moon Lord, which has a very distinct motif in its theme. We decided to implement this into our Eye of Cthulhu track to emulate Shelley's use of leitmotifs and tie our track into the world. Additionally, we included a siren in the form of the stock Logic Pro plugin, Alchemy. As Eye of Cthulhu was one of our first tracks we composed, we were still somewhat unfamiliar with the style, and as such we leaned heavily on synthesizers without much focus on the orchestral elements. For some themes, this can stylistically work, but we ended up coming back to the Eye of Cthulhu and retroactively adding more orchestration to it to flesh out the sound. After Eye of Cthulhu, we were enjoying composing boss themes and decided to continue on that route by composing a track for the Lunatic Cultist. The cultist fight is very frantic, with lightning strikes and ice crystals bombarding the player, along with the cultist's Stardust Dragon. We wanted to reflect the frantic nature of the fight, while also paying homage to the boss's cultish and ritualistic elements. We started by sampling a synth loop from the sample pack Chop Shop, selecting one at 175 beats per minute to give the piece an upbeat feel. We used heavy percussion in this track, making extensive use of the Logic Pro plugin Ultrabeat and its kickbang to provide a driving rhythm. For the siren, we sampled a bowed cymbal, which Shelley used frequently to build tension in his music, and to reflect the boss's attacks, we included these rapidly ascending arpeggiated sequences in a buzzy, distorted synth to represent the lightning attacks. We also used East-West Symphonic Choir's Platinum Library to represent the cult element of the boss's identity, along with these ascending and descending cello runs. Next, we wanted to try composing something in a completely different style. We chose to compose a track for the Blood Moon event because of its unsettling and creepy atmosphere. The current track for the Blood Moon, called Eerie, was a great starting point and provided us with a baseline for the style we wanted to match, along with the Solar Eclipse track. We found a few distinctive markers that all of these tracks shared, primarily their sparse instrument selection, heavy use of ambient pads and background noise, and their limited use of percussion and orchestration. We laid out the key signature of G minor with an ambient pad from the plugin Sculpture, and background noise from the plugin Alchemy. From here, we fleshed out the track, making sure to match the markers we heard from the stimulus tracks. Our percussion remained limited, primarily consisting of the African Kit and a sample drum loop from Ultrabeat. In terms of orchestration, we used short, staccato violin and viola phrases to outline parts of the melody, and brass to thicken the sound. When moving the orchestration tracks over to East-West, we found an amazing violin technique called su ponticello, or on the bridge, which is a technique where the player plays on the bridge of the instrument to achieve a screeching, scratchy sound. This sound is quite common in the horror genre, particularly as a stinger, and we felt that it matched the atmosphere of the track perfectly. For our last boss theme, we decided to go for the Destroyer. The Destroyer is one of the 3 mechanical bosses the player fights after entering hard mode, which all have a distinct metal or rock element to their orchestration. As such, we analysed tracks from the OST that shared this metal quality, including the Frost Moon event and Plantera themes, which is playing right now. For this piece, we started with a heavy, driving percussion rhythm, using a Logic Pro drum machine called Lo-Fi Glitch. For the siren, we combined a timpani roll with a cymbal roll to create a kind of riser, both to introduce the boss and to set the mood for the high-intensity fight. We implemented orchestration more in this track, both to achieve a thicker sound and to accentuate the melody. Many of the synths we picked were much more electronic than previous pieces, to fit with the mechanical theme of the boss. The Destroyer fight often leads to frantic periods of dodging, which we wanted to reflect with these rapid upwards and downwards arpeggiated phrases in the B section. Finally, staying true to the conventions of the style, we added electric guitar to emphasize the metallic themes of the piece in the last 16 bars. However, we still felt that the section was lacking something to make it stand out. It was at this point that Noah, a skilled guitarist himself, suggested improvising a solo over the piece. We recorded 7 takes of the solo and spliced together the best version. For our last piece, we wanted to balance out the tone of the soundtrack. Up to this point, everything we'd written leaned either towards intense or eerie, so we decided to create something calm and peaceful in a major key. We decided that the Sky Islands on the edge of space would be perfect for this task, as their placement naturally lends themselves to a light and airy tone. Our inspiration for this track primarily came from the existing day and night space themes, as these provided a great reference for the atmosphere we wanted to achieve. However, since the Sky Islands sit between space and the surface, we wanted to blend the two, with our track taking some elements from the serene, tranquil atmosphere of the space themes, and some elements from the more grounded feel of the surface themes. As such, we heavily utilised a variety of soft, glassy ambient pads for this track, making heavy use of Albino 3, which provided us with 3 such synths. The start of the piece features a delicate descending arpeggio and slowly fades in from silence, making this track seamlessly blend from the space theme when the player moves between biomes. Since most Sky Islands generate with a small house, we wanted the music to feel subtly lived in, so at bar 26 we wove in the leitmotif from the town theme, tying the sound back to the human presence in an otherwise distant world. Lastly, we utilised the East-West choral library to add a very subtle and soft vocal element to the track. This element helped secure an angelic and otherworldly feeling in the track, which matched with the atmosphere and context we were trying to achieve. This piece doesn't modulate much away from the starting key, which, although going against the conventions we outlined in the beginning, was a stylistic choice, meant to convey the sense of calm and isolation on the Sky Islands. We encountered quite a few problems when composing, particularly when composing with these new and unfamiliar libraries. Because we were composing these tracks in Logic Pro, we had to use our MacBooks for the brunt of the work. However, the program that runs East West, called Play, wouldn't work on either of our laptops and would only work on my PC. This meant that for each of the orchestral regions, we would have to bounce out the parts as MIDI, send it to the PC, lay it out in FL Studio, select all the articulations, master the track and automate the volumes, and then bounce out the orchestral tracks as MP3 files and send them back to our laptops. This process, although tedious, was definitely worth it for the extra quality East West provided over the stock Logic plugins.
Unknown.